Hello everyone, welcome to the YouTube channel of Drishti IAS. So this is the one more episode with regard to your 100 most important topics which Drishti IAS has brought for all the aspirants, for all the students who are appearing for the 2026 prelims exams. Today we are coming up with the GDP deflator versus the CPI versus the WPI. That means we will be talking about the concepts, the measurements with regard to these three topics. Okay, so myself, I'm Girish Venkatesh, and once again, welcome to all of you. So what we have got in the first slide, it's about the topic which we are going to discuss today, that is GDP deflator, CPI and WPI, that is the Consumer Price Index and the Weighted Price Index. What about their concepts? What about what all things they cover, and what is the method with which they can be measured? So first of all, we must understand that why do we need multiple measures of inflation? All of you know what is inflation. I need not tell you. Regular rise in price leads to inflation. But there is a question which props up in our mind, that why do we need multiple measures of inflation? The reason for it is written here in a very simple language, that inflation, it cannot be captured by single index. No single index can capture inflation, because when we talk about inflation, then there are different agents in the economy that face different prices. Like for example, one of the agent is the household. The household, they face retail prices. The other agent in the economy is the producer, who faces the wholesale price. And also we can say that there is also one more agent, that is with regard to the value of all final goods and services in the GDP, and that is with regard to the GDP deflator. So why do we need multiple measures of inflation? The simple reason is that inflation, it cannot be captured by a single index. And because there are different agents in the economy, and the different agents, they face different prices. Like the household, they face the retail price. The producers, they face the wholesale price. And the economy as a whole, when I say economy as a whole, then it's a macroeconomic term. So when the economy as a whole we talk about, then it faces what? It faces the prices of all final goods and services. Remember, only final goods and services are taken, not the intermediate. When we will be discussing national income accounting, there I will be telling you what is the difference between final good and intermediate good. But whenever we take the economy as a whole, then the prices of all final goods and services are taken. So here all final word has to be added. That's why I have not written it, because I wanted to focus on this word final. It should be all final goods. So that's why India, what it does, it uses these three, you can say, measures: CPI, WPI and GDP deflator. Now there is an exam tip which I have given. Now this exam tip is very, very important for you. Now what does this RBI use? The RBI uses CPI combined. When I say CPI combined, it means the rural as well as the urban, both of them together. So it is for what? Inflation targeting. And CPI combined is used by what? RBI. And for what? Inflation targeting. And the GDP deflator, this is the most comprehensive measure of inflation. Why? Because it is taking the value of all the final goods and services which are produced in the economy. Got it? Now, so there are three measures: CPI, which can also be referred as retailed consumer price. Then there is the WPI, which can be referred as wholesale producer price, because the producer is involved here. And the GDP deflator, it's the prices of all final goods and services in the GDP. So what is the first question? What is the first thing you have to remember? That what are the three indices with regard to inflation measures? One is the CPI, the second one is the WPI, and the third one is the GDP deflator. CPI, it faces what? Household. So the household, they face what? Retail prices. So it's retail consumer price. The WPI, it's the wholesale. So it's related to the producer, and the producer, they face what? Wholesale price. So it's wholesale producer price. And this is GDP. GDP is something which is related to the entire economy as a whole. And GDP is nothing else but it is the value of all final goods and services which is produced in the primary, secondary and tertiary sectors. So when you add all these final goods and services at a particular price, that is referred as what? GDP deflator. So this is the three indices with regard to inflation measure. Now let's come up with the first, that is the consumer price index. As the word says, consumer price index, all of you can understand it is something with related to household. All of you must know in macroeconomics there are four sectors which we talk about. One is the household, the second one is the private sector, the third one is the government, and the fourth one is the foreign. So here it's the consumer price index, that is the CPI, and the CPI, it measures inflation at a point where the consumer purchases the goods. That means the CPI is measuring inflation when? The point when the consumer purchases a product. That is, when the consumer is purchasing goods, then that point the CPI is measuring inflation. And this is the most relevant index when it comes to analyzing the cost of living. This cost of living, you must remember that cost of living to analyze the cost of living, what is the most appropriate measure? It is consumer price index. Why? Because it is measuring inflation at a point where the consumer purchases the good. So that's why the cost of living is analyzed in a very better manner with this particular consumer price index. Plus here, the basket, it includes, that is the CPI basket. What does it include? It includes food, it includes housing, it includes clothing, it includes transport, education, health, and other miscellaneous services. Okay, got it? Then the second one, here we are saying that what are the various variants with regard to the CPI. Now the CPI, it has a lot many variants. I have written there one by one. The first variant is the CPI combined. I said you, inflation targeting. The best way to do inflation targeting is CPI combined. And when I say combined, it's with regard to rural and urban. So this is with regard to the headline inflation. And do you know that the base year is very, very important? Because if you see the formula to calculate CPI is the cost of basket in the current year divided by the cost in the base year. So every of this variant has a base year, and the base year for CPI combined, it is 2024. Remember it, it's 2024, and that is equals to 100. So what is the base year? 2024. What? CPI combined. Then comes CPI AL. AL stands for agricultural laborer, and the CPI for agricultural laborer, the base year is 2019. Then the CPI for industrial workers, the base year is again 2019. And the CPI for rural, it's 2024, the base year. And CPI for urban, again, the base year is 2024. And the CPI for RL means what? RL means rural laborers. The CPI for rural laborers is 2019. Sorry, a mistake here made by me. That is CPI IW, that is industrial workers, it is 2016. So 2024, the base year is with CPI combined, that is the headline inflation, most comprehensive one, it's the most important one. Then the CPI rural, it's 2024, and the CPI urban, it's 2024. Then the CPI agricultural one, laborer, it's 2019, CPI rural laborer is 2019. And what about the CPI industrial workers? The base year here, it is 2016. And what is the formula? The formula is cost of the basket in the current year. That is, what is the cost of that particular basket, whether it is with regard to food, housing and all, in the current year, divided by the cost in the base year, multiplied by 100. That means whatever answer you're going to get in a percentage manner. Got it? So this is with regard to CPI. So crystal clear to everyone? Thank you. So next thing, don't forget to leave your comments in the comment box. If it is clear to you, say it yes. Or if you have any doubts, please leave your doubts on the comment box. I will be taking up your doubts. Don't worry about that. Then comes the WPI. What is this WPI? Now, when I talk about the WPI, then it's nothing else but it is the Wholesale Price Index. What is this? Wholesale Price Index. Something related to the manufacturer, something related to the producer. So it measures price changes at the level of wholesale market. That means whatever will be the price changes in the wholesale market, that is measured by Wholesale Price Index and is dominated by manufactured goods, fuel, primary articles. What about the Consumer Price Index? The basket had food, housing, clothing, transport, education and health. And in WPI, it is dominated by manufactured goods, fuel and primary articles. Primary articles in the sense the raw materials and all. But it excludes services. Very, very important. WPI, it excludes services. And we can say that WPI, it was India's headline inflation index before CPI combined replaced it in 2014. Very, very important for your exams. That is, before 2014, the headline inflation index, it was WPI. But after 2014, it became CPI combined, which is the headline inflation index. And WPI, we can say it is influenced by commodity prices. Why? Because it is talking about the prices, change in prices with regard to the wholesale market. So it is heavily influenced by commodity prices. And there is no reflection of consumer cost. Matlab, it does not reflect what will be the cost of the consumer and all. And it is useful for tracking producer prices. See the difference between them. And the weighted distribution I have given here, like primary articles is 22.6%, fuel and power it's 13.1%, and the maximum is 64.2%, which has been given to the manufactured products. Okay, clear everyone? Got it? Now, after this, what is there? So the CPI and the WPI are complete. Now, what about the GDP deflator? As I said you, GDP is what? Gross domestic product. So GDP deflator, it's the most comprehensive measure of index. It's the most comprehensive measure of index. Why? Because it takes the entire GDP basket. Entire GDP basket means whatever are the final goods and services which are produced in your country within the domestic territory of your country. That is with regard to your GDP. So that is why it is the most comprehensive. And here the GDP deflator is nominal GDP upon real GDP into 100. Remember it, whenever you are talking about base year price, in economics it's referred as P0, and the current year price in economics it's referred as P1. Always remember the nominal GDP, it is measured in the current year price, and the real GDP, it is measured in the base year price. So this particular GDP deflator is nominal GDP upon real GDP into 100. Got it? Nominal upon real into 100. Plus it includes both goods and services. WPI did not include the services. And it includes both consumption and investment goods. And automatically it updates every year. Matlab its basket, what happened is that it updates every year, unlike the WPI and the CPI. I'm going to, in few seconds, in few minutes, I'm going to bring you a differentiation format that will be more helpful to you. But it is released annually or quarterly, so it is not useful for month-to-month tracking. That means this GDP deflator, what happens, the data with regard to it, the figures, they are released annually or quarterly. Quarterly means after every 3 months. As a result, we can say that month-to-month tracking with regard to your country's inflation index, that cannot be monitored month to month. So that is what is GDP deflator. So I did say you, I'm going to bring this for you. So what is the difference? This table, you have to memorize it. Remember it. This is the table which is the master table for you. You have to memorize it. You have to write it down also. I'm moving away from the screen so that you can click a photo of it or you can write it down. What you can do is that first major point of difference, price level. Here it's retail consumer basket. Here it's wholesale producer, and here it's the entire GDP. Then include services. Yes, CPI includes services. And what about WPI? No, it does not include services. And what about GDP deflator? Yes, it includes services. What about the basket? Here the basket is fixed basket of consumer goods and services. Here also the basket is fixed with regard to commodities only, because it does not include services. So here it's fixed basket of commodities. And what about here? The basket is not fixed, it changes with GDP composition. So when it comes to the basket, CPI and WPI, the basket is fixed. But when it comes to the GDP deflator, the basket varies, that is, changes in GDP composition, the basket varies as such. What about the frequency? That means how often they are estimated. Yeah, how often, just say here, I said how often they are released. Monthly, so month to month tracking is very good. Here also it's monthly, but here it's quarterly or annually. So that's why, which is more important? The CPI is important, WPI is important. Why? Because month-to-month tracking of inflation index can be done. Then the main user of CPI is RBI with regard to inflation targeting. WPI, it's the policy and the industry tracking. And when it comes to macro analysis or economist, then the GDP deflator is used. And last, we can say for whom it is best. When you want to know the cost of living, then the CPI is best. When you want to know the producer price trends, then the WPI is left. And when you want to know the overall inflation in the economy, then it is GDP deflator, which is good for you. Okay, so isn't it a very good table which you can have in front of you, and within few minutes everything will be clear to you. Okay, now let's go to this. Now, do you know that the CPI, WPI or GDP deflator, they diverge? That means there are certain reasons why they diverge. And what are the reasons why they diverge? One of the reason is the food stock. The other reason is the commodity stock. The third reason is the service inflation. And the fourth reason is the tax changes. That means the CPI, WPI or GDP deflator, they diverge. That is, they move in different directions. The word diverge means what? They move in different directions. Different means up, down, right, left, like that. And that is depending on what is driving inflation. Now, if the food stock is there, if there is a food shock, then what happens? The CPI moves up. That means there is a food shock. Food shock in the sense there is a shortage of food. Then the CPI, Consumer Price Index, will go up. Why? Because it is related to something that is the consumers, they consume. And in the basket of the consumers, the food was there. So the food shock, the CPI will move up, and opposite you can know. And if there is a commodity shock, commodity is related to the producer. The commodity shock, then what happens? The WPI moves up. If there is a tax change, now tax is something which the government does. It's basically a fiscal policy of the government. The taxes can be increased, the taxes can be decreased. So the taxation policy is with regard to the government, and it is with regard to the overall economy of the country. So taxation changes, what happened? The deflator moves strongly. That means whenever there is a tax change, there is a change in the deflator. And what about the service inflation? Service inflation, it affects CPI also, and it affects the deflator also. Because service, the provider of the service is the household. The provider of the service is the household. And the household, when he provides the service, he gets the income. And that income is what is spent on the commodities and spent on the consumption. So that's why CPI is there. And service is something which is with regard to the deflator also. The GDP deflator also, it goes up. So whenever there is service inflation, CPI as well as the GDP deflator, they will go up. So what are the four driving forces with regard to inflation? Food shock, commodity shock, tax changes and service changes. That is what it is written here. Whenever there is a food shock, then the CPI rises more than the WPI. Whenever there is a global commodity boom, then the WPI, it will spike because due to fuel and metals, and CPI jo hai, it will also rise, but it will rise moderately. When it is service inflation, CPI and GDP both rise, but WPI is less affected. This is also a very important thing for your remembrance. That means if you have this thing in written, none of the questions from this part will go wrong. And what about tax and subsidy changes? The GDP deflator changes even if real output is stable. Okay, so this is what is the GDP, WPI, CPI. When do they diverge? Okay, now let's talk about which index for what. That is, each index, they have a distinct role in India's policy. Every index is having what? A distinct role in India's policy. Every index, whether it is the WPI, whether it is the CPI, whether it is the GDP deflator, every index has what? A distinct role in India's policy as well as analytical framework. Now, first of all, let's talk about the CPI. The CPI, it's for the household and also for the monetary policy. That means in the CPI, it is used by RBI, because CPI, it is best for measuring the cost of living. That is, what is the cost of living? And according to that, everything is being done. Cost of living, say, you try to know about the standard of living and you try to know how much of people are there under the BPL, that is below poverty line, and all. So it's the best to measure the cost of living, and it is used by RBI for inflation targeting. When we'll do inflation, I'll tell you in detail about this targeting. That is to keep the inflation in check. That is plus or minus 4% or 2%. That is the inflation targeting. And important for wage indexation, DA for government employees and social sector schemes. So these are, we can say, the role which the CPI plays for the household. That is only one thing you have to remember, that when we talk about CPI, it is measuring cost of living of the household, and it is used by which agency or which institution? It is used by the RBI. And why does the RBI use it? For inflation targeting. Okay? And what all comes under it? Like, it's important for wage indexation, DA, that is dearness allowances for the government employees, and also for social sector schemes. Then comes the WPI. WPI is for the producer and the industry. Now, WPI, what it does, it tracks the producer price trends. Whatever is the producer price trends, it is tracking that. That is, whatever is the production price trend or the producer price trend, it is tracking that. And it is very useful for understanding imported inflation in commodities. Okay? And important for contract acceleration clauses and all. And GDP deflator, it's for the macro analyst. Now, if you look at this table, where is that table? See, best for cost of living, producer price trends, and macro analyst and all. So that is what I'm discussing about. These 2 points we are discussing there. Okay. So when it comes to the GDP deflator, it's for macro analysis. That is, it is used to convert the nominal GDP into the real GDP. As I already said you, nominal GDP, it is calculated at the current price. That is P1. And the real GDP, it is calculated at the base year price. That is P0. So it's used to convert nominal GDP into real GDP. And it shows how much of GDP growth is due to price change versus real output change. That means there is a GDP growth, but how much of the GDP growth is due to price change and how much of GDP growth is due to the production change, that is the total output change. So that is what it is trying to measure. This is a very, very important point. That is GDP deflator. It is actually trying to show that there is a GDP growth, but the GDP growth, it can either take place through price change or real output change. So how much GDP growth has taken place due to price change and how much GDP growth has taken place due to real output change. That means there is an output change, and due to that output change, the GDP growth has taken place. So it's helpful with regard to long-term analysis and inter-country comparison also. Okay. Now, with regard to your exams, these are the key traps to watch out. Like, for example, if they say WPI includes services, true or false? It's false. WPI only includes goods. Then the CPI is more comprehensive than GDP deflator. Again, false. GDP deflator is more comprehensive than CPI. Why? Because the GDP deflator, it takes the economy as a whole and it takes all the final goods and services which are produced in the economy. That is what? Then the GDP deflator use fixed basket. Okay, that is also false. GDP deflator does not use fixed basket. As the GDP changes, so is the change in that. So it does not use fixed basket, rather it uses a variable basket. RBI targets WPI inflation. Now this is also false. RBI never targets WPI inflation. RBI targets headline inflation. Headline inflation in the sense CPI combined जो है, that is what. Then CPI directly captures producer prices. No, CPI is something which is related to household. So it will be the WPI will be capturing the producer prices, but CPI will capture what? It is the consumer price. So how was this particular thing? I guess now crystal clear to all of you. After this particular video, just sit and analyze, just sit and try to analyze in your mind that what all you have done. And please have a habit that whenever you view a video, like you have seen this particular video, then what this particular episode, then after 5 or 10 minutes, what you do is that you sit there, take a piece of paper, take a paper and write everything. Do not look at that video and write. Just write everything what you have understood from this particular episode. Okay, then that will be very good for your preparation part. Now for memory thing, CPI, it's for cost of living, WPI, cost of producers, and deflator, price changes in the entire GDP. Now when it comes to the final table with all, then CPI, it's with regard to the retail prices, fixed consumer basket, inflation targeting and cost of living, main use. WPI, it's the main, it's for wholesale producer prices, it's for commodities, not services. And here also the fixed basket is taken, and here the producer trends, contracts, industries are the main use. And GDP deflator, it's the overall price level in the GDP. All the final goods and services are taken, and real versus nominal GDP and macro analysis is being done. Okay, so this is the last minute revision before your prelims. Remember it, you should have this in the last minute revision. Okay, one more thing you have to remember, WPI, this is by the Office of the Economic Advisor, OEA. Then CPI, that is by the National Statistical Office, and GDP deflator, it is by the NSO, which is which derives from the national accounts data. This is also very, very important. And when it comes to the base year, CPI 2024, which includes imports, WPI 2011-12 revision is in progress, it excludes imports, and GDP deflator 2023-20, 22-23, and it excludes imports. Clear, everyone? So these are some of the very, very important things. Okay, now a new 2024 CPI series or status of producer price index. Just now in February 2026, what happened was that the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, they officially released what? A new CPI series with 2024 as the base year. Got it? So this was a new CPI series 2024. Who is issuing it? It is being released by whom? Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. You must remember the name of the ministry here. Now what is this new 2024 CPI series? That is the component weightage. The new CPI series, which is based on Household Consumption Expenditure Survey 23, 24, significantly adjust weights to minor modern consumption. And the food and beverages, the weights have been reduced from 45.86. Foods and beverages के लिए the weights it have been reduced from 45.86% to 36.75%. Remember that. That means this is with regard to the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey 2023-24. Now this new series, which is based on this survey, what happened? There was an adjustment which was made to minor modern consumptions. Food and beverages, the weight has been reduced from 45.86% to 36.75%. Very important. And this particular is aligning itself to what? Angel's law. And what is the Angel's law? Angel's law is nothing else but where the share of income spent on food decreases as wealth increases. That means when your wealth will increase, your proportion of income which you are spending on food, it will decrease. Why? Because now you will spend more of your income on the status symbol goods. Got it? This is Angel's law. So that's why the weight has been reduced, and this has been reduced in alignment with the Angel laws. Then the second thing what has happened is with regard to housing and utilities. Now this, what happened? A sharp rise, 10.7% to 17.67%. So now for the first time, it is now explicitly includes rural housing rent. Then the transport, the weight, it has increased again 6.39 to 8.80%, and that reflects higher mobility cost. And as a result, also with regard to health, there is a slight increase from 5.9% to 6.1%. On education, there is you can say it's a standalone category, 3.33%. Okay? And also information and communication, the weight, it rose to 3.61%, and now including the digital services like OTT subscription and all. So when it comes to the survey, then what are the areas which have been touched? One is the food and beverage. There is a fall in that, 45.86% to 36.75%, in alignment with the Angel's law. Then housing and utilities, there has been a sharp rise, 10.07% to 17.67%. Then with regard to transport, there has been an increase, 6.39 to 8.80%. This reflects that the mobility cost has increased. Health, there is a slight increase, that is 5.9 to 6.1. Education, it has been static, that is 3.33% weight. And information, it has rose to 3.61%, and it includes the digital services and the OTT platforms and all. And what are the other structural changes? Now, other structural changes is that the basket has been expanded. The total items increased in the basket. It is from 299 to 358, and in this goods 2308 and services it's 50. So the basket has been increased 299 to 358. Out of this 358, 308 goods and 50 is the service. What about the new inclusions? Pen drives are included, external hard disks are included, value-added diaries are included, babysitter services are included. And what are the things which are deleted? You must know it. VCR, radios, cassette players, they are all excluded because they are all obsolete. Obsolete in the sense now no one uses it. In the same way, when we come about the consumer price index, then there is the producer price index. March 2026, the producer price index remains in a transitional phase, but it increasingly reported alongside traditional methods. And the government, it is working towards the full implementation of PPI. That means the government is trying to replace, or it is trying to supplement WPI with that of PPI. So what is the key difference between WPI and PPI? WPI and PPI is that the PPI, it excludes indirect taxes and trade and transport margins, capturing the actual price received by domestic producers. Got it? Unlike WPI, this PPI, it excludes what? Indirect taxes, it does not have in it, plus the trade and transport margins, plus the capturing of actual price received by domestic producers. So this is the key difference between WPI and PPI, and government is working towards replacing the WPI with that of the PPI. And what about the status of this PPI? The status, as I can say you, that for January 2026, India's PPI grew by 1.8%. It grew by what? 1.8%. So that shows a clear sign of supply side inflation before it reaches the retail level. And also a working group is currently refining the transition. As I said you, the government is really committed towards that transition, and for that a working group is studying so that the WPI, it can be replaced with PPI so as to align Indian statistics with global standards. Okay, so that brings an end to our complete thing with regard to the WPI, CPI and the GDP deflator. So how was the class today? How was this video? How was this episode? Give your valuable comments, will your valuable feedbacks with regard to it on the comment box, and don't forget to subscribe this channel if you're not subscribed. And thank you all, and more such videos, more such episodes will be coming up with. Till then, have a nice day and work hard for your 2026 exams, because always remember any one thing: nothing works in this work other than hard work. It is only hard work which will always pay you, and whatever the hard work pays you, that is the best thing which we are going to get. So what you have to do is that you have to do the hard work and also believe in yourself. Just believe in yourself. Have confidence that you can do it, you will do it, and you have to do it. With these remarks, thank you all. Have a nice day.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.